Story time. I've only had one experience with Jim Ross. This was way back in 2016, coincidentally my birthday. Um, what happened was this. It was my dad and I headed out to this event over at MCW in Joplin, Maryland, at the MCW Arena, which I think was an old Kmart that they converted into, an arena. So, um, I'm there basically looking around and see like, holy crap, it's like wrestling Nirvana here. So, I knew Jim Cornette was going to be there. I knew Jim Ross was going to be there, and I think Rikishi was there too. Also Hornswoggle. Oh, I got a story about that too, by the way. Bret Hart, Jimmy Hart. Okay, serious what happened. So I walked up to Jim Ross, and I admit I don't fanboy out much, but who the fuck am I kidding? I moderately fanboy out. Who the hell am I kidding? The first thing is this: my dad and I go over to see Jim Cornette, and my dad makes this deep cut reference to a interview that he did where Jim Cornette was talking about the fall from the scaffolding he did, right? We're idiots. And, my dad ran up to him and said, we're idiots. And Jim busted out laughing. And that was the first time I really seen him in person, because I just knew him from the podcast and his interviews, right? And this wasn't the guy I expected, and he just literally just kind of melted, and it was like, wow, that really mattered. And the way my dad and him were talking, you would have thought my dad was in the old Memphis territory that drove the getaway car. You would have thought they knew each other for years. I think even Jim forgot that he just met him like 5 minutes ago. So we make our way over to Jim Ross, and my dad goes, somebody stop the damn match. And Jim blushes and rolls his eyes and goes like, oh God. And let's be real about it. Fan or not, that's one of the greatest calls on commentary in wrestling history, even sports history, So I kind of mumble up, and I admit I freeze up a little bit, and, Jim, kind of like a doting granddad, just talks to me. And he said, I said, well, my birthday. He's like, wait, it's your birthday? I said, yeah. It's like, want a picture? I said, yeah. Well, how much? No charge. I was like, what? I can't charge you on your birthday, man. So, all right, cool. So I got a picture with Jim Ross, and, that was a really cool moment. The only kind of honorary moment I noticed with Jim was there was something that wasn't going the way he expected it to. So he said something like, to paraphrase here, some fucking organization so goddamn unorganized, something like that. But it never affected the fans. He was more griping at, the folks who are managing it. But I wouldn't have known any different though, because it seemed like it was flowing pretty well. It didn't seem like an outlaw mud show. But the irony about it is, I was trying to figure out, all right, so who is this mysterious bigot? I'm like, well, it couldn't be Jim Ross, because how he's spoken on social issues as of late, and it's in the context, this is like 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And, he seems like, he doesn't seem like a racist to me, because listen to his podcast and everything, he doesn't seem like a bigot or a racist or anything like that. And then you find out about this shit. I'm like, oh no. I ain't gonna lie. Hopefully he's changed and evolved and broadened his views. But, this is a very disappointing, this is quite jarring, to tell you the truth. Um, but yeah, I'm telling you right now, this is a disappointment, but from, I've observed, in his podcast and also the exchange we had, hopefully he was, not just being professional, but also, open his mind up, because that sucks, Ironically, also, I got another story about how I made Jim Cornette blush at that same event too, but that's another story for another time, actually. Anyway, just, yeah.